Welcome to Brampton Focus. It's estimated that in the region of Peel there is over 1,000 gang members as part of 130 gangs. 1,000 gang members. My name is Michael Charbon. Next on Brampton Focus, we sit down with Peel Regional Police Chief Jennifer Evans and the Strategic Gang Unit member Craig O'Connor to talk about gangs in the region of Peel. That's next on Brampton Focus. Welcome back to Brampton Focus. Sir Robert Peel, he was actually the namesake of the region of Peel, captured a statement which kind of talks about the father of modern policing. He said that the police and community are one. Interestingly enough, in 1983, a budding young constable of about 19 years old, looked much younger, joined the cadets and joined Peel Regional Police. In 1990, Jennifer Evans joined the Ontario judge who was reviewing the police failures in the Paul Bernardo investigation. Jennifer Evans interviewed every one of Bernardo's surviving sexual assault victims, which actually amounted to more than a dozen. Then in 2010, she joined the inquiry into her police failures in the Robert Pickton, who eventually became one of Canada's worst serial criminal. Named the deputy chief of the Peel region in 2008, she then, on October 12, 2012, became the first female chief of Peel Regional Police. Today, with over 2,036 uniformed constables, about 847 civilians, and 30 cadets, the Peel Regional Police has now become the second largest municipal police service in Ontario and the third in Canada. In 2017, the funding that came through, they came in under budget, and a community survey that showed that 93% of all those polled there were satisfied with the service, up from 86% 3 years ago, and that's an independent survey. Today, our topic is about gangs, and we're very fortunate to have Police Chief, Peel Regional Police Chief Jennifer Evans here with us, and also Constable Craig O'Connor, who's from the Strategic Gang and Intelligence Units. Thank you both for joining us.
Thank you for having us today.
Congratulations on all that you've done.
Thank you.
And thank you for many people in Peel who have expressed to me in the other two occasions that I've had the pleasure of interviewing you to thank you for your service and everything that you've done.
Thanks, Michael.
Greg, you're the front line about gangs, and I think it was very opportune that the chief brought you along. Not to discount the importance of the chief, but I want to get to right to you. Right, there's about 1,000 gangs in Peel. How serious of a problem do we have?
It's an interest that's on the rise for sure. We have approximately 100 that are out there, different memberships that are coming. Gangs are coming from different areas throughout the GTA and all over Ontario, as we've seen with recent raids and things that have happened. And it's just one of those things. It's ever growing. It's contributing to crime and causing a lot of issues and problems for the community.
When you, Chief, came to the Peel region and you became the chief in 2012, there were gangs then, but our population has increased in the Peel region, but also the propensity of people within gangs. How serious of a problem for the whole region of Peel, not just in Brampton and Mississauga, but the whole region of Peel, because you talk to many other police chiefs and you look at Ontario, how much of a problem are we looking at to nip it in the bud?
Well, I think this year we're seeing an increase in violent crime. We're seeing an increase in our homicides. While the numbers may not increase, we're seeing an increase in homicides involving firearms. So it is a growing and a concern to me. And I've addressed this through many community meetings, as well as recently at the Regional Council presentation. Mm-hmm. So I am concerned about the increasing use of firearms and the presence of firearms on our streets in Brampton and Mississauga. And they seem to be, the increasing violence is causing myself and my officers a great concern.
When you decide on taking targeted positions on certain things, like gangs, you put a team together, like Constable O'Connor. What makes you decide how many people and what level of resources you commit to something like that?
Well, we've been fortunate through the We've been getting grants since 2007. I think in the province, we call it the TAVIS grant, or the Provincial Anti-Violence Investigative Strategy Grant. We've been getting grants, which allows us
TAVIS
to
was instituted in Toronto. Are we going to have a BAVIS, like a Brampton, or a PAVIS?
No, there's TAVIS in Toronto, but there's been PAVIS, which is provincial.
Provincial, okay.
For I think TAVIS was the first year, and as a result, it spread to other police services allowing to get PAVIS, which is a provincial grant. So that allows us to deploy strategic officers in uniform out in the areas and targeting in certain areas where we see an increase in crime and targeting the offenders in those areas.
I had the opportunity to travel with TAVIS in 2002-04 when I was shooting a series, and we went into one particular area of Toronto where all the undercover police officers came from other areas, so no one in the area knew and had the familiar faces. And as criminals do, they know the cars, they know the license plates, they know the faces, regardless if you're undercover driving in a slick or not. And it was very interesting to see this whole group of people who went into an area and concentrated on that area, and they made a huge difference because a criminal entity in that area did not know what was going on. How informed are they, Greg, about keeping in contact? I mean, many of the gangs are in competition with each other, obviously, for turf and for drugs and all the other stuff. But how many of them really are aware of what your group is doing?
Obviously through different investigations, and as things go along now with disclosure and stuff like that, it gets out there. The element and the criminal aspect that goes on with these guys, there's no specific one side against another side. Generally, it's everything's become hybrid now. So if two different gangs can work together and they can come out with a common goal and work as a criminal organization to get ahead, to better one or the other, in regards to drug trafficking, human trafficking, firearms, then they'll utilize and certainly set up shop in different areas so they can have that where you and I could work in conjunction to take over an area and look after things. Everything nowadays is so transient. It's so easy to get onto a main 400 series artery and go within an hour of a different area or 2 hours, or even to get on a plane or a bus. Is so simple nowadays, and they're certainly utilizing this to spread their organization throughout the GTA and beyond.
And what kind of activities are they into? I mean, whenever we watch, I mean, I don't know if you've ever watched Live PD. I do. If you watch several of the other police shows and things that are going on that use reality-based coverage of police activities and working in crime areas, I think we're naive in Canada in thinking that some of these things don't take place here. What kind of criminal activity are these gangs engaging in?
Anything, any description that you can see in the criminal code or any other provincial statute that's out there, these guys are involved in. The break and enters to the houses, the street robberies, the auto thefts, the revinning, the shipping of cars or anything like that. Anything that's going to make them money or that's going to advance them as a criminal organization or even a personal gain for any of these individuals, they're certainly going to do.
We don't see as prevalent in Ontario, Toronto, Peel region of street level drug dealing. It's a lot more secluded. It's not as obvious as in certain other large city scales. How do you communicate to the general public that these things are going on that they may not see, and that you want to communicate to them the severity of what's going on?
That's a good question.
I think a lot of people see it after the fact. You know, their suspicions are raised or anything like that, but certainly with us doing our enforcement and our proactive investigations, by going out and doing these early morning raids or doing these warrants or even just sometimes being proactive in an area and doing the arrests, people come out later on down the road and they sit there and they just, you know, will approach us after the fact and sit there and say, you know what, I thought there was something going on, I just wasn't 100% sure, but I know something wasn't right. You know, and these individuals, they can call into the office, they can use Crime Stoppers, some of the information comes that way, and that's what's happening after the fact. A lot of people are sitting there thinking, going, I live in this beautiful neighborhood, I have this nice house. It's just one of those things where they just kind of go about their daily life, and some people just don't pay attention to some of the things that go on. After the fact, when it happens, then they realize that it can happen in different places and anywhere.
So the officers, sorry Michael, the officers who work with Constable Connor, they work in uniform. So that way, after the takedown is done, the people feel comfortable to come out in the street and they're approaching officers in uniform.
Right.
So that's important to say. I think when you were saying, talked about Toronto, they were undercover. In Peel, our strategic enforcement team, we're actually in a uniform.
We're talking about gangs. My name is Michael Charbon. We've got the Chief of Police, Peel Regional Police, and a Special Constable who deals in gangs, and we're going to talk more. 2 more segments. My name is Michael Charbon. We'll be back with more right after this. Welcome back to Brampton Focus. You know, just a little while ago, there were some meetings downtown. They were talking about school resources, where there was a police officer in the school. And there was a resounding support that police officers in schools has a positive effect on students. Students can approach them. Students can talk to them. They give guidance. It humanizes a cop. Listen, if you're in trouble all the time and you got the bracelets on, of course there's going to be a negative impression. If you want to get to know a police officer and call him a cop to his or her face, they're human, they're just like us, and they're actually really nice people. And to put them in schools is very, very important. A personal point, but I think something that needs to be said, because when you're talking about gangs, and that's what our topic is today, we've got Peel Regional Police Chief Jennifer Evans here, and Constable Greg O'Connor. Greg is actually a part of the Strategic Gang Unit, and they go in and focus in on certain areas. I wanted to talk to you, Greg, first of all. I made a personal statement saying that I think it's important that police officers are in school. When you're talking about gangs, you're talking about young youth at risk. How do you communicate to those kids who are vulnerable, who might be taken in by a gang, and others who might be coerced? What's your methodology to reach them?
Through the school resource program, it's very important that we're in the schools, that we are associated with them, and we do different things. We go in, we give presentations, you know what, we do different, interact with them on a daily basis. You see them out and about, you see them grow. You see them, their families, family members, cousins, whatever it may be. You're not strictly there for the enforcement purposes. You're there to develop relationships and have a bond with these individuals. Through doing your presentations, through interacting with them. You know, you're there playing basketball, floor hockey, you're going on school trips with them, you're interacting, and they see you in uniform and outside of uniform as a person and someone that they can come and talk to. There are individuals that you have to take the enforcement aspect with them when it comes to the different serious youth crimes. But there's also those that you can pull aside and have a chat with and develop a relationship. And it's amazing the bond that you can develop with these kids. And you can go from an individual that completely wants no contact, wants nothing to do with you whatsoever. And then by you know, the end of the school year, they're coming to you or they're seeking out your advice. Personal success story I had was an individual that I dealt with many years later, probably 7 years later. I'm out in the community at a community event, and they came up to me and have a full-blown conversation with me, introduced me to their fiance, and sit there and actually say to their fiance, this person changed my life. This was an influence to me. Yeah. I had family members that were involved in gangs, and you know what? Constable O'Connor made a difference to me.
See, it's stuff like that that needs to get out. And I'm sorry, but I think sometimes, well, this is not about what I think, but I love what you just said. We could spend an hour on this, couldn't we?
We could easily.
So let's talk about indicators. If parents are out there and they're thinking, what do I have to know? My kid's a good kid. Johnny's always a good kid. Susie's always a good kid. What are some of the indicators that you can note and see that there may be a change taking place where they have to be vigilant?
Great question. I think a lot of times it's in their clothing. Are they getting more money? Or are they having multiple phones? So, you know, a lot of the parents these days give their children phones so they can communicate with. But if all of a sudden you're noticing your son or daughter has multiple phones, why is it? Why do they have multiple phones? Are they changing their physical appearance? Or are they wearing fancier clothes? Or are they changing when they come home? Are they keeping later hours? Are they changing the individuals they hang around with, the group of people they hang around with? And Greg, you probably have a lot more indicators than I can
Yeah,
speak to,
it's basically what it is, a lot of desocialization from the family and everything like that. The later hours, the different drug alcohol abuse that you may come across, doodles, drawings, social media has a huge presence on people nowadays. People want to follow. Is it just
youth at risk? Some people would say, I mean, where I went to school was a relatively affluent, I was very fortunate. Drugs were prevalent because everybody had money. So there was lots of drugs. That doesn't necessarily mean because you don't come from an economically troubled area that you're not going to have drugs. In many instances, you may have more because you got the money to get it. But it isn't just youth at risk. It is all sectors. Fair?
Yes, yeah, I totally agree with that. It comes from anywhere. Individuals that have money that are brought up in affluent homes, and the youth that are out in the community. It's some people want to do it or want to be involved in it because of the social media, the presence, the music aspect. You know, the money, the cars, whatever it may be. It's a huge lure and a draw to them.
Interesting you said money. There's one of the myths that said most gang members make very little money being part of a gang. Those who do make the money usually end up doing time, and getting your education is a key to making money and ensuring a future, not joining a gang. There are many promises. There's much allure that comes with it. One would say putting carrots in front of people. How do you discourage those carrots? How do you get those kids? I mean, the reasons why they join a gang is up on the screen now. How do you deter them from thinking that that is a good life choice to be a member of a gang?
Ultimately it's going to end up them. That's unfortunately the end result is you're going to end up being incarcerated. You're going to lose time. You're going to be put away from your family. You're not going to be able to have the free life that you want and that you can have, and you're doing it to yourself.
So it's kind of like thinking that if you run from the cops, you're going to beat them. It ain't going to happen. And no matter what it is, I mean, it just doesn't work. So when someone gets into something like that, I mean, we have to look always at the positive road back. For those youth that have made a mistake, we all make a mistake. Nobody is perfect. What do you have in your toolbox to help those kids come back that were affected by that and, you know, through unfortunate circumstances have had to learn what the circumstances are? How do you bring them back?
There's lots of different programs through the Yippee program that I believe we touched on at the end. Different social programs, things that they can do. There's, I know of a couple different success stories where gang tattoos have been removed in the past through doctors and through different grants that have been applied for and approached. At the end of the day, we're going to help people the best that we can, and we're going to do what we can for them or provide and get them in the proper direction and provide them with the proper resources, some way, some fashion.
Just our last couple of minutes, Chief. How much of a budget commitment do you think needs to be given to this? Do you need more money in your budget to be focused on gangs? Because this is a problem. As it grows, it metastasizes, it increases. How do you nip this in the bud, and what kind of a budget commitment do you need from the Region of Peel?
Well, earlier I mentioned that we've been getting grant funding since 2007, and I think is that a sustainable formula right now? It's not. The province of Ontario is looking at their grants and how much they're going to give out. So each police service in the future will have to determine what their priorities are. We get different grants for different activities. We get a grant for the RIDE program as well.
Right.
This is a very expensive problem because it doesn't end just when Greg and the other officers lay charges. Then they have to go to court. And so the time spent on getting convictions in court and the impact. So we also talk about, other programs that often, depending on the type of crime the youth may be charged with, there's a diversion program. So they would be, instead of getting criminal record, which will be with them, as
given an option, another stream.
There is another stream they can go through a youth diversion program, and they have to go to classes, and they have to, and the success rate from these diversion programs has been wonderful. So, is it expensive back to your question? Absolutely, it's very expensive to the community.
But in the long run, it saves money. One of the myths is that real families don't force people to commit crimes just to get respect and love. Real families accept you and love you for who you are and what you are. Even if your real family is having problems, being in a gang will not solve them. It will only make things worse. My name is Michael Charbon. We're in our final segment coming up. We're talking to Peel Regional Police Chief Jennifer Evans and Greg O'Connor, part of the gang squad here on Brampton Focus. Our last segment coming up right after this. Welcome back to Brampton Focus, our final segment with Peel Regional Police Chief Jennifer Evans and our Greg O'Connor. I call him our Greg O'Connor. I had a little chat in between commercial experience. This is the kind of guy that you wish was on the gang squad and that your child would talk to. A really nice gentleman. You know, in 2016, there was 250,000 calls for service. That means 225,000 people called in to ask for help and assistance. And what we want to accomplish in this last segment here is to give you some tools. If you see things that are going on, if your kids are involved, if you have youth within your confines, I'm going to go to you first, Greg. What's the most important thing that a parent should do if they see their child potentially slipping in, or even before that happens? What is it prevent? What is the penicillin to make this work, if you wish?
I think just the good family values. Just the family sitting down and being supportive and getting on the right track, the right direction, making sure that everybody's there for the full support.
And what do we do about the kid who lives in a family that doesn't have family values, that is having a struggling with life? Two parents that are working, not there, they're on their own, they're a key child. How do you reach that? How do you reach that individual?
Through many different ways. The school resource officer.
Yeah, we'll come back to that again.
Can be a good person for them to talk to.
Hobbies.
Boys Girls Club. Different things. There's so many different programs in the community that people need to really reach out and utilize that are there. And there's different things that the police do within the schools as well. Different fundraisers, different officers, even amongst the division that a lot of people aren't aware about. With us, reaching into our pockets and donating things and making sure that things go on. Different learn to skate programs, have people do different things. It's we get people involved.
I was at the annual general meeting. I had the honor to host the Boys and Girls Clubs of Peel annual general meeting. There was 5 of your constables there, and when you came in today before the show, I commented and complimented you on these 5 people. They were so wonderful. The kids were around them. They were friends. I mean, it's things like that we have to see more of. How can we get more of that message across, Chief?
Well, we've been trying to advertise on the different programs we do. And I think, you talked about how do people, I think we have busy lives. And I think sometimes we miss what's going on right in front of us because we're so busy going to work and we're going
Can't
back
see the
forth.
forest for the trees.
That's exactly right. So I think we encourage, as the chief, I would encourage you to be paying attention to what's going on in your street. So sometimes you're actually even going to see your neighborhood kids out and you may see something's wrong. It doesn't mean you're not going to phone the police on them, but why don't you phone the police to even talk about how do I address this issue? If I see, young Johnny down the street and I see him coming forward and I see he's changing and I know his parents are really busy, but I'm watching him because I'm a retired person and I've seen him change, call the police. That's to speak to the street crime unit or the major drugs advice unit or your neighborhood, your community liaison officer. Each of our divisions have a CLO, they're called, community liaison officer, and ask them for advice. I'm always looking for people to come out and ask for advice. We've got a 21 division tomorrow. We're having an open house. We have open houses at the divisions throughout the summer. Phone or walk into a police station and talk to the police and say, what do you have concerns about?
I also want to encourage people, it's not a bad thing to phone the police when something happens. My neighbor had someone go through his truck. He left his truck unlocked. Okay, you leave your truck unlocked. He said, but someone rifled through it. Does it tick you guys off when people call with information like that? I got to ask you because they're going to say, well, they don't want to. It's not an emergency call, but it is an intelligence call.
It is. Yeah, absolutely. I'm always encouraging people to call. We may not come out to a call like that, but we will take we will take a report for it because then we are following the crime trends in that area. So please call all the time.
So with about 2 minutes left, again, thank you for your service and all the years. 2012 is a long time. You're coming up to your contract renewal. Is there something that you want to say to the folks with regards to gangs and with regards to the parents out there and our community at large?
Yeah, you know what? I just want to reassure the community. I know you're hearing a lot of stories about the increasing violent crime. You say our police officers are doing a lot of arrests. Really, a lot of good work is out there. And I say, encourage you to follow us on Twitter. That we're putting a lot of our media stories on all the good arrests. Peel Regional Police have got one of the highest solvency rates for homicides in Canada. We have officers training from other police services come to Peel to learn about how we do our investigations. Last year we did our community survey. You've touched on that.
Yes.
So we jumped up 6%. So That's because of the great work that the men and women on the streets are doing, and because of the community outreach. We've got community mobilization teams, so that's something we haven't talked about. So these are active officers in the community, proactively going out into neighborhoods, getting to know the building superintendents, getting to know the neighbors and the kids on the street. So that way, you know me, and then you're going to phone me, or you're going to give me a heads up that this is happening.
You see, Chief, I love that, but every time we say that, we have another group that says, oh, you're marginalizing us, you're making the kids feel and the people feel that they're being centered out. We come back to the school thing. I mean, whatever happened to the respect for a police officer for what a police officer does? Just under a minute, your homicides, they're down. In 2015, there were 16 in the region of Peel. In 2016, there was 11. You have a 78% resolving rate. Our population continues to go up. Are we going to get more officers? And everybody was saying, I mean, I've heard this, almost 48% of your new recruits now are racialized, meaning that is multitude of people.
That's correct.
It's not just the white British cop, if you wish.
We are actually trying to hire people who reflect our community.
Yes.
Right? So as a female who joined the job in 1983, there wasn't too many women in policing right now. So right now we're at 18% females. 50% of our population is women. So we are still trying to recruit more women for policing. And I say, just to be reflective of our community.
Peel Regional Police Chief Jennifer Evans, thank you so much for being here. And also Greg O'Connor, who's part of the Strategic Gang Intelligence Unit. My name is Michael Charbon. You've been watching Brampton Focus. You can get us at bramptonfocus.ca. Thanks for watching.